What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you some games with a great new game plus, which is a suggestion for a video I got a couple of days ago that I thought sounded fun, and obviously here we are. Because after getting to thinking about it a little bit, there are certainly some games with, I think, better new game plus cycles than others for sure, and for me at least, that usually means one of two things. You're either giving me the opportunity to play around with late game tools that just weren't around long enough to actually use in the main experience, or B, you're giving me just like a really convenient way to see other paths through the story without having to unlock, like everything extra, getting to play through just different iterations of what could have been, that kind of thing, in a way that feels like it respects your time. Because on the flip side of that, while plenty of games these days have New Game Plus, thanks to, I believe Chrono Trigger was actually one of the first games to do it, it doesn't really change the fact that some of them are just kind of boring. Like, for instance, if I can play through a New Game Plus cycle that simply gives you an extra skin for beating the game or whatever when you're done on that particular mode, that's honestly really boring to me. That's not really worth the time invested. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and dive into this and actually talk about a few of these, and we're going to kick it off nice and easy with a fun one via Dishonored 2. Both Dishonored and Dishonored 2 are great games for a variety of different reasons, giving you all sorts of tools and methods to approach any given problem, but Dishonored 2 cranks that up a notch, as you'd probably expect, by letting you choose to play between either Emily or Corvo. Now, typically, they both have different powers associated with each one, which makes their playthrough different on a mechanical level, but obviously things like dialogue and stuff like that will change as you move through it as well. And thankfully, with the game being relatively short, both of these offer a relatively different experience that I think makes them both worth experiencing individually. However, Dishonored 2's New Game Plus implements a very simple yet effective mechanic of combining what I like about New Game Plus in general, which is it's going to let you obviously play through the game as the other character, as you would probably expect, but it also goes the extra mile of letting you unlock the skills from the other character as well, which means not only can you experience this other story, you also get to experience it with potentially the other person's skill set if you want, or, mix and match as you please, which I think is great. And given that Dishonored at its core really has different story options related to how you utilize your powers to complete your objectives anyway, particularly in Dishonored 2 where they really leaned into letting you be aggressively non-lethal as an example in order to get certain endings, that kind of stuff, altogether just makes for a really good New Game Plus situation. What I really like the most about it is just how, again, simple but effective it really winds up being in its execution, which is why I wanted to talk about it first. But for this next title, I do have to give a bit of a spoiler warning, because we're going to be talking about Dragon's Dogma, and if you don't know about Dragon's Dogma, in order to talk about New Game Plus, I'm honestly probably going to have to spoil a significant chunk of the story, so you'd probably be better off just skipping this altogether if you're concerned about that. But Dragon's Dogma is a fantastic universe. I really, really enjoyed the first game when I ran through it. 2 was a bit of a disappointment, as I've mentioned in many places, but one of the things I really liked about Dragon's Dogma was its sort of cyclical story that happens over and over again between the Arisen, the Pawns, the Dragon, the Champion, all the characters you meet in between. It's all just a sort of big cycle with how the universe works. And while this game does in fact have some pretty, I would say, standard things you would likely expect from New Game Plus in general, just, letting you carry forth all of your previous gear, things like that, allowing you to partake in some new challenges. It even offers some convenient stuff like being able to more readily buy port crystals as an example, making fast travel significantly easier. It also does a few extra things as well. For starters, there are some quests that are only available in New Game Plus, meaning that you could not have seen them in side content as of the first playthrough, and this is largely due to the way affinities with certain NPCs work. In a first playthrough, it's basically impossible to get the affinity you need with certain NPCs to take on certain quests, because by the time you meet those characters, the opportunity for those quests has already passed, and thus it's only available in New Game Plus. But while that's all well and good, the thing I like most about Dragon's Dogma's New Game Plus is actually much, much more simple than that. You see, at the very end of the game, you fight a character known as the Seneschal, And without spoiling absolutely everything, basically in New Game Plus, it's very possible and guaranteed if you're not playing online, the Seneschal will just straight up be you. Circling back to, again, how the world is a constant, unbroken cycle. And I think they did a really great job of weaving the narrative into the New Game Plus there. But we still have some more games to talk about, and next up, I want to talk about something a little bit different in the form of, I guess, Nioh 1 and 2, really, as the New Game Plus functions mostly pretty similarly. Now, this one's a little different in the sense that the story doesn't really change or anything for the New Game Plus cycles of Nioh 1 and 2, but rather, what I like about this is pretty much just the mechanical side of things. The game gets more and more difficult, adding on mechanics, but also letting you dive deep and really min-max your own build and kind of work towards something progressively in a way that is really fun for like ARPGs and stuff that I like to play in my own time when I'm not necessarily looking to get like deeply involved in a narrative. And to this end, Nioh 1 and 2 both have several New Game Plus cycles, with each one, of course, adding difficulty, but also expanding mechanically what is available to you. And while the first New Game Plus, Dream of the Strong in Nioh 2, is relatively tame in the sense that it just, of course, ups the level, makes things more difficult, it's not like a crazy jump or anything, but where it really starts to get interesting is the one just above that. Getting new tiers of gear, of course, allowing you to like hyper specialize in whatever your build is at this point, which will likely be going, and it's just kind of an iterative thing where while you are running through a lot of the same content, much in the way you would with like an ARPG or something, you're still growing and specializing this build to, of course, tackle the, more traditional Souls-like challenges on top of that. And it's just like a really great specific time if you're into that kind of thing, and it scratches a very particular itch for me. But I will say, New Game Plus for Nioh 1 and 2, for me, actually does go a little bit too far right at the end. I think the very last New Game Plus cycle is where some of the stuff you've got to do to get, enough damage to clear bosses and stuff gets a little bit meta for me. And this is because a lot of it revolves around putting a specific status effect on bosses to like massively increase your damage. But if you're playing in a way that doesn't really lean into that fully, you're about to have a bad time. And up until that point, it's just not really necessary to do that stuff. And that's usually where they lose me personally, but I guess we'll see how Nioh 3 does it when that releases. Either way, though, a pretty good time. Now we're switching gears into the TRPG side of things, starting with Triangle Strategy. Triangle Strategy is a TRPG that came out relatively recently, back in 2022 to be specific, and while it is very, very heavy on the story, it's also got a pretty satisfying turn-based battle system that makes it fun to overcome all the challenges that are thrown your way. But what really makes this game click is playing through it multiple times, and that is because, thanks to its story-heavy nature, there are a variety of different choices that lead to, of course, different outcomes, which can eventually lead you to one of the game's several endings, and this is obviously where you'll unlock New Game Plus. See, New Game Plus doesn't just force you right at the beginning and not keep important story characters in your party, that kind of thing. No, rather, Triangle Strategy is really all about seeing the things you didn't see previously, which involves taking all of your recruited characters and everything and then running through the different choices that you could have made previously to, of course, get those different endings. All in search of what is generally kind of referred to as like the golden route or the golden path here. And that is basically, there is a sort of perfect solution to Triangle Strategy's story, but it's going to take a bit of work to actually make happen, which is, I would say, the primary purpose of New Game Plus existing. But either way, I think Triangle Strategy is a game you'll get the most out of if you play through it multiple times to see all of this stuff, to the point where I think just a single playthrough of this game can actually be a little underwhelming comparatively. Which brings us to our final entry in what is honestly not all that dissimilar of a situation with Tactics Ogre. Thanks to a remake also back in 2022, this one has been more available than ever, let's say. But two things that really make Tactics Ogre fantastic are an incredibly deep system of mechanics for its various TRPG battles, of course, but also the remarkable amount of choice and consequence that can lead you down one of three main paths, but each of those paths also has like different branches and stuff associated with it. that can all lead to a bunch of characters either dying or surviving or having different feelings about your party, that kind of thing. And as a result, there's just a ton of stuff in Tactics Ogre to see and do as a result of this. And thankfully, the New Game Plus option, which I think is called the World System if my memory serves, is there to basically facilitate you actually seeing all of this. After you beat the game, you can utilize this system to go back to different anchor points at various points in the story, essentially, where you can make different decisions to see different outcomes and get to grips with all of the various things you may or may not have missed along the way. Now, another cool feature about this is that obviously it lets you retain all of your progress while you do it, but you can even choose whether or not to be scaled to the relevant power level of the fight you're about to get into to really lean into the tactics side of things. But all told, I think Tactics Ogre's New Game Plus system is really just kind of everything I personally want out of a New Game Plus system. It allows you to carry on with, again, an incredibly deep system for character progression, while also allowing you a very convenient method of seeing the things you did not see and keeping track of them at the same time even. And so while you could easily spend hundreds of hours playing this game regardless, they do a really great job of laying out what there is to see here. Or at least for the most part. There's a few other things hidden here and there, but still a wonderful New Game Plus cycle for a wonderful game, which is as good a place as any to wrap up this particular video, which I certainly hope you enjoyed. Though with that in mind, I would love to hear about any games with some particularly interesting New Game Pluses that you really enjoyed for one reason or another. Naturally, that means to like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.